Hey guys, welcome to the Solution Architect channel. And in this video, I'm going to take you step by step creating a SQL Server database on Azure, and then create a table on that database connected from Visual Studio Code, and then also create a database then on AWS, and then show you some configuration settings to be able to connect to that database. Thank you very much for watching, and let's jump into this. We're inside the Microsoft Azure portal, and I'm going to create a relational database. What I'm going to do is, and I don't want to create a server, I want to create a database that is a database as a service on Azure. And the way to do that is I'm just going to go to all services here, and then we're in databases here, and I'm just going to select Azure SQL. This means that it doesn't need a server to run on. This is just a service that Azure provides. And click on that, and then I'm just going to click on Create Azure SQL Resource. It's going to ask me what type of database do I want to create. I want to create a SQL database best for modern cloud applications. Hyperscale and serverless options are available. And then SQL managed instance, best for most migrations to the cloud. Lift and shift ready, meaning that if you have a SQL server on your premise, then you can just use this one to create a SQL database on Azure. And then the last one here is SQL virtual machines, best for migration application requiring an operating system that you need to run on. We're going to just choose a SQL database. So drop down here gives you a few options: a single database, elastic pool, and a database server. We're just going to select single database, create, and I'm going to create, I don't know if I've got Azure Databases Demos. I'm going to use that one. And database name, Architect DB. And see if I've got a server. I don't have a server. I have to create a server. And you need to give the server a name, Architect DB server. Okay. My admin. Okay, I've got a password, and I'm going to select, not going to select the US, I'm going to select what's closer to me, Western Europe. And need to move my face out of the way. And then I'm not going to use elastic pool. And I'm going to change the storage here. Configure database. First, I'm going to select, see if I can get some basic one in here. I don't want anything. I really want a basic one that's not going to cost me anything. I really don't need anything. I'm just going to create a server. So apply this and go networking. Let's leave it on public endpoint. That will just automatically create an IP address for you. Go next. And existing database, no, we don't have one. Collation is just the standard one there, and I'm going to just enable advanced data security, not now. Okay, no tags needed, and we go review. Okay, so estimated cost per month is €4, and I'll cancel this before I pay for it anyway. So let's go create. And this will now go and deploy a database for us. And this will take a few minutes. And I'm going to pause and come back when it's done. Okay, and our database is complete. So let's go to resource and see what's created for us. So out of the box, you can see status is online, it's running. It run on West Europe, and this is my server name, and this is connection string. If I click here, it will open a connection string for me. Show my connection string. This is my connection string, so if I develop anything, I can use this connection string. Let's go back to overview. All right, and there is connect with, and you can connect with Visual Studio. So which is quite nice to connect with your Visual Studio from here. So if I click that, you can open up your Visual Studio, and then you can add tables and things like that to your database. I don't want to use Visual Studio Community Edition. I want to use Visual Studio Code. So before we go to Visual Studio, I need to set the server firewall, and I had to add my IP address here. So you put in just a rule, say allow my IP. You put in your IP address, start and finish. This is your local IP address from your PC at home or wherever you access it from. Not sure if this will work inside where you've got your own firewall. If it's inside a business, might need to use a proxy connection then to connect. But let's save this and go back, and let's open. So you also need to go back to your copy and paste your connection string, change your password because my password is not in there. Okay, so we're in Visual Studio Code, and before you go ahead and connect to your SQL database, in Visual Studio Code you've got extensions, and I installed an extension called SQL Server from Microsoft. So you can just put in SQL Server in the top there and the search bar if you haven't installed it yet. And this is the one from Microsoft you want to install. And let's go to the icon then. And on the left, I've got a lot of icons here, but on the left I've got SQL Server icon, and I want to add a connection string here. So I can just paste in my connection string, press enter. Let's call it architect DB, press enter. And you can see on the left hand side here, it's connected to your database. You've got your tables in there. Okay, nothing at the moment. So after that is installed, we go to our table here. We can just right click on the database on the top there and say new query, and we're just going to, I'm just going to copy paste this in and see how simple it is to create a table. Okay, it's my products table, and run the query on the right hand side here, execute query, table created. So refresh, we've got our products table in here, and our primary key, code, description, price, and quantity. And this is how simple it is to create a table and a database inside using Azure. And now let's jump onto AWS. So I'm inside AWS Management Console, and what I'll do now is go to create a database using their Managed Relational Database Service, RDS. And you can see they've got out of the box called Amazon Aurora, which is a MySQL and a Postgres compatible type of database. But let's see if we can create a SQL Server database. So we click there. You've got your Easy Create, which I've done this before, and the Easy Create will create the VPC and security settings and everything for you. The one thing that I found with using Easy Create is that you will struggle to access your SQL Server if it doesn't have a public IP address. So let's do our settings ourselves. I haven't done this before on AWS, but let's see how it works. So we'll set up a Microsoft SQL Server, and you can select here which one do you want, the Express Edition, Web Edition. This is probably the most affordable one, and I'm not going to keep it open for a long time, and I'm also going to see what versions have they got available. Okay, we'll just select the latest version. We'll go to the free tier because I don't want to pay for it. Let's call this database then Database Instance Architect DB. I leave the admin password as the user and just add my admin password. Okay, and with this we can now select our size of our servers. So let's just select the smallest one we can. Okay, general purpose SSD. Yeah, we'll just use the general purpose, and we don't need 20 gigs of storage. Storage thresholds. You can't use less than. Okay, so looks like limit is sorry, didn't see that. Minimum is 21, and let's do 25. Create a VPC. Now this is where it's becoming interesting. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that I can select an IP address for my server, because VPC will actually hide it away from your local PC. I think I can select this one, say yes, because the RDS, usually if you create RDS, will not assign a public IP address, so you'll not be able to connect it from your PC. But there might be security settings, even though we create this VPC, that will not allow us to out of the box connect to our server. So we have to go and play around with that a little bit. Choose an existing security group. We don't have. We need to create a security group. We call this Architect Demo DB group. And no preference on availability. I'm going to just use EU West 1A, and the port we're using is 1433. That will be the port available for accessing our database. Enable Microsoft SQL Server Windows authentication. Skip that. We're not going to do Windows authentication. We're just going to use our. This is the free tier, so hopefully this won't cost me anything by creating this. And I know from last time I created a existing out of the box one. It took about 35 minutes, so this will take a while, and I'll come back to you. Click on create, and let's see what happens. And I'll come back to you when it's done. Okay, so the database has been created successfully. So if I go in here, I can get my endpoint here. And because we select a public IP, it should be able to provide me with access. The one thing that you need to remember is provide, what I did do is on my security groups, if you go inside here, you can add inbound rules. And inbound rule for my IP address. So you can edit it here, the inbound rules. You can add a new one, say for my Microsoft SQL, and it will use this 1433. So I've got two rules in here. It seemed to work when I added the 0.0, meaning that anybody can access this database. This will be deleted after this video, before this video has been uploaded. So I added these rules so that I can access my database from my Visual Studio Code. So let's go to Visual Studio Code, and we're going to go to our SQL Server tab here. And I've added it already, but I'm going to add it to show you how to add the connection. You just paste in that server name, And database, you can just leave it open. My user and my password. Say yes, you want to save it. Don't worry about. Now that will take a few seconds to connect. And then you can see on the left here, you've got, similar to my previous one on Azure, you've got your database. Okay, so what we want to do here is create a database first before we create a table. In Azure, we had the database created, only the database itself, and on Amazon AWS, it created a database server for us, which can host multiple databases. So what we have to do on the AWS version, we have to create a database. So let's write that database and call it Architect DB. Let's run that. Okay, that is successful. We can refresh here, and we've got our Architect DB database in there. Now we can copy and paste this over, and we can just say, or we should say here, use Architect DB. And create the products on that. And that worked. So let's refresh our database tables. We've got our product table in there, our columns in here, and Bob's your uncle, we've got our database. So this is the comparison. It's a little bit more tricky in AWS. I really don't like their dashboard. It's just not intuitive enough. You have to run around a little bit. So I struggled a little bit in the beginning. In the background, you didn't see that. But my preference, obviously, because I'm a little bit biased, is still Azure. It was just much more simple. One thing I can say about Amazon, its security is very tight. So accessing it from your local machine is you have to open up that firewall rules to be able to connect to it. So this is a comparison between creating a SQL database on Azure and a SQL database on AWS. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.